Hey, welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. This week, we got our guy, Dr. Mark King, who does arts education for the state of Maryland. We're excited to hear about what he's going to talk about in terms of how integration of arts goes into schools. Let's go. Drop the beat.
Unlearned Unlimited. What? Unlearned Unlimited. Yeah.
Welcome to Unlearned Unlimited. My name is Dr. Sito Narcisse, and I have my co-host,
Tatiana, Echevarria. Welcome, y'all.
And we have a banger show. We got Dr. Mark King in the house. With us today, Dr. King does a lot of arts education for the entire state of Maryland, the whole state. He does a lot of cool things. This week, our show, we were like, listen, who can we talk to, Tatiana, that was going to bring us into this space around the arts and education, right?
Well, and we know how these programs are kind of losing funding, and there seems to be what people believe is a lack of interest in these things in school systems, which I can't believe.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that either at all. So we're like, listen, who can we bring in to talk about the real, right? Let's just get with the guy that helps the entire state break it down for us. So we've been brought in Dr. Mark King. Mark, how you doing, sir?
It's all good, Sito. Good to see you again. Good to see you. How's everything going?
Listen, we are living the life, as you can see, trying to make sure that we can get the good word out. One thing me and Tatiana always talk about is we wanted to make sure that we had a show that could talk about what we believe is really going on, right? And then talk about the unlimited possibilities in the work, and also talk to the innovators. We find you as one of the innovators in this space, specifically around art education. And, people are always asking us different type of questions in the K-12 or in the university space. And we're like, listen, instead of us giving you an opinion, let's go out and actually talk to some people who are actually doing things on the ground and that can really tell you, like, here's what the realities are. And more importantly, talk about what they like. I know you've been taught this particular thing in a textbook, right? But here's what the real world works, right? And here's how we've kind of pushed to innovate that. And so, Mark, we always know that you've done a great educator in this space. And I know you served in a lot of spaces. I'm going to say a few things about you that I've known about you because I've known you for a while. And then I'm going to let you, as me and Tatiana always says, we let people, the best people who didn't know about themselves is the people themselves. So we let them tell about themselves. So here's a couple of things I know about Dr. King. Great educator, worked in the DC public schools, been to Baltimore City, have served as a school leader. Is that right, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. And so you've been in the gamut of education in a lot of different spaces. So you have seen not only variations of districts and cities and things like that, but you've also seen different type of dynamics on how different systems have tried to either resolve an issue, solve them, or navigate through an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Absolutely.
Looking at those things, I think will be great for our audience to hear about that. What do you think, Tatiana?
Let's do it. And obviously as an, both of us being educators, all of us, right? Whether we directly work in school systems currently or not, I am very curious about the work that you're doing now in this arts space and how you landed there. So yeah, just take it away. Tell us a little bit about you, your educational journey, and kind of what are you doing now?
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. So we kind of go in reverse. Currently, I'm the vice president here at Arts for Learning Maryland. And what we do is we provide assemblies, artistic residencies to schools, because we all know one of the first things to get cut in school-based budgets is unfortunately the arts. So we try to fill that void while also giving artists the opportunity to interact with children during the school day. We also have out-of-school time programs. In Baltimore City last summer, we had 13 different sites where we included 4 extended school year sites for students who have IEPs that may not be on a diploma track. So we wanted to make sure that we're inclusive in all our practices. So we had 4 sites that were strictly K through 12 for those students and let's say who may not be on diploma track for extended year. We also had 77 classrooms for our K through 8 students in general education and those students with less than 20 hours on the IEP. So we had 77 classrooms for those students as well. Currently, we're in the planning year because based on the data produced at Arts for Learning Maryland, we are currently in the planning year for our charter school. So
Wow.
recently, the city commissioners in Baltimore City Public Schools approved us to be a charter operator. So we're going to be operating Dream Academy, which is the former Thomas Jefferson Elementary Middle School here in Baltimore City. So it's a K-8 school, and what we want to do, we want to replicate what we do in after school time, which is provide an artist and a teacher collaborative planning time to actually plan a lesson and co-teach the lesson based on the standards that are in the curriculum, while also infusing the art standard as well. So we're doing a lot of things in that space, trying to get arts back into schools. And based on the data, it's clear that, especially when you're talking about ELL students, special needs students, and those students in K2 and 6, 7, 8, those students are the ones who benefit the most based on arts integration and how we assess students based on the district-wide assessments that they use. For example, we use the DIBELS data that the district gives us in reference to our early learners. We also use iReady Math for our K-8 students. So we're using the district-based assessments to determine how we're doing in the space and what we need to do to improve the outcomes of students.
Now, tell us a little bit before you got to this role. What were you? I see that you led a priority school. So if you could talk a little bit about what that was and how you accomplished, moving the needle in that environment.
Well, originally I started assistant principal at Hyattsville Middle School, and we were one of the lower performing schools in the States, in the state of Maryland, and it was like 45 of us in the building, but 25 of us were new to our role. So we were trying to make a determination as to what could move the needle for students while also building capacity, because I was 30 years old. I was a first year assistant principal, and we were all trying to figure it out. And one of the things that we decided was to start infusing the arts into the classroom and into the school, because it was one thing to look at academic achievement, but we were also looking at attendance and why students were not coming to school. And one of the things that we found out was somewhere along the lines, and I'm not going to say particularly at Hyattsville Middle School, because I think it's systemic, somewhere along the lines, we took the fun out of school. And when students don't want to be there because it's not an enjoyable experience, they don't come.
Say it
So
louder.
we decided
Say it louder, please, please.
Well,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's true because, it's just like our summer programming. We had 9 schools, 77 classrooms, and the average attendance was higher than the attendance during the course of the school year. So when you're talking
because
about
they enjoyed what they were doing. Maybe
and
that
it's
had
not
something
rocket
to do with it.
science. Absolutely. But like I said, once the space is enjoyable and students actually get the opportunity to express themselves using the arts while also mastering a standard that they struggle with during the school year, it makes life a lot easier for everybody. Because, for example, the teachers that we work with during the summertime, 90% of them come back every summer. And they're taking their month of July to come back and work with these students and work with these artists to give children exposure not only to the arts, but also help them master standards that they struggle with during the school year. So I think one of the most important things, getting back to the Hyattsville days, was we tried to make school fun again, tried to help students understand that there is math in your art class and it can be demonstrated, whether it's instrumental music, whether it's vocal music, whether it's visual arts. So we tried to make the connection for those students who were not connected to the academic content area, but were connected to an art form, and that they could see how that content area translate into the art form. So after about 3 years of doing that, we were able to take Hyattsville Middle School from a comprehensive middle school to a creative performing arts middle school, based on the work that the staff and students done around the arts, and also based on what they did academically. So we were the first school to ever go from a comprehensive middle school to a creative performing arts middle school in Prince George's County. So that was my start in the arts and how it kind of was ingrained in me. But when I went to be a middle school principal at James Madison, that wasn't the problem. So that was not the issue. It was one of the larger middle schools in Prince George's County. I think we had about 1,000 students back then. And one of the things that me and the administrative team noticed was how we did not push children to be beyond what they saw and what they could do. So by pushing them every year, we had a motto. The first year, we just wanted to expect a little bit more. Let's just do a little bit more as a collective group and see what happens. So after that first year, we had about 11% gains in our ELA scores, and I say about a 20% gain in our math scores, simply by just expecting a little more of ourselves, the students, the parents, everybody. So it was a collective effort. And through that process, we were able to get removed from the state's reconstitution eligible list. So following that, the staff had a brilliant idea, and this is a valuable lesson for me. They wanted to implement advisories. And I'm like, well, listen, you have 1,000 middle school children in this building. You're going to give them the final 30 minutes of the day just to go to an advisory, and you think they are just going to go. And they were like, yes, they are going to go. And I was like, they're not going to go. But I listened. And it was a valuable lesson for me because I said, well, let me go ahead out here on hall duty because I know what's going to happen when you ring that bell and children get to go to advisory. They went right to advisory. That is the smoothest transition I had ever seen in my years in middle school.
Give a little bit of context because I understand what advisory is, right? What an advisory period is. So what does that look like in a middle school setting? And what does that mean?
So Dana Blair created a master schedule, and she built in 30 minutes for an advisory. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to give children and teachers the opportunity to connect beyond the content area. So every teacher made the determination as what they were going to offer for these 30 minutes at the last 30 minutes on every Friday. So every student got the opportunity to sign up for what they wanted to participate in, regardless of the teacher, regardless of the grade level, regardless of the content area. If you decide you want to go to the music class because you're interested in music and not in the band, these are your 30 minutes. So that was implemented, and there was also the opportunity for children and teachers to connect just beyond content area because some teachers and students they just never ran into each other because they were in different grade bands or different content areas. So it was an opportunity to build community and for people actually to get to know each other better.
Well, and even have the teachers do something that they're interested in that's outside of their content area. So love that idea. Sorry, I got super giddy when you talked about that. I was like, oh my gosh.
Let me, Dr. King, let me push a little bit because as when we started up, we know, our audience is all over the country, right? So different states have different rules and regulations around different things. And we start off watching and we engage with people on the ground to hear that, because budgets are tight, that arts are usually the first thing that starts to get cut, right? And also we've talked to school leaders or superintendents, whatever their positions are in the school system, that they've only seen arts integration sometimes only fit in particular areas in the schedule of the child's day, right? So you talked about putting it in advisory time. States have not always moved, like they've not always put a marker in terms of an achievement score or a number or an indicator that has said, hey, this is important. And so we're going to measure this as a grade or something like that, right? So therefore, schools have turned around and say, well, it's the easiest thing to cut because I'm not going to be graded on that. I'm going to be graded on taking this test for math for my scores and, whatever, right? We all know in the education world, what usually gets cut first is what people are not evaluated on, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so my question to you is, one, how's the state of Maryland addressing that, for one? And number two, what is happening across in Maryland where they're pushing more arts integration into schools to to make sure that there's some type of connection, right? Because what I could definitely agree with you on is the more arts in schools, the better we see kids are holistically, right? And more connected. I just don't think, because of how the states assess or don't assess that, right? Depending on what state you live in, we've seen where those challenges are. So in Maryland, what have they tried to done to do that? And is Maryland one of the states where they say, hey, we are going to count the arts in that mix?
Well, actually, Sito, that's my job, to inform people about how the arts are directly tied to academic outcomes for students. But as far as the state of Maryland is concerned, there are some statewide institutions that offer grants. So I have a team of grant writers. So we will apply for grants, and we will fill out grants for particular schools. And I'm going to say it out loud, in particular zip codes, because certain schools in particular zip codes in the state of Maryland do not have access to the arts as other zip codes do. So for me, that's an equity issue. So we focus on those areas in Baltimore City and Prince George's County and in other urban areas that don't have access, because access is an equity issue for me. So there are state-run agencies and agencies in the state that actually have grants that we apply for, and we use these grants to ensure that those schools in those zip codes who might not have the per pupil allotment based on the number of students in a building, we try to make sure that we supplement them with some of these grants so these children still get exposed to the arts. Now, when we're talking about the arts getting cut and the how and why, I completely understand, because I was a middle school principal and high school principal. So what I do, I try to not only show them the data, but I try to use simple artistic analogies for them, because a quarter note is also what? A decimal. A quarter note in music is also a decimal. A half note is a decimal. That half note is also what? A fraction. So what I try to do is I try to make it as simple as I can for those who are not in tune to the arts, to help them understand that you have an artist in your building that can demonstrate mastery of a standard using this instrument. They can show you quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes, and how those are fractions and how those are decimals. So if you don't give them that opportunity and you sit them in that math class for 90 minutes, which is entirely too long and which is not age appropriate, but that's a whole other thing. But you sit them in that math class for 90 minutes.
Please, we got to talk about class periods. Ooh.
Oh,
yeah, but does the state measure, Dr. King, does the state measure those courses?
So when you say the arts, music,
yeah, do they you look at those as for accountability on their accountability report?
There is the statewide star rating system, where schools get credit for a well-rounded curriculum. I'm not going to say
they don't call out the arts specifically.
The arts. No. There is a fine arts section that counts toward that well-rounded curriculum, but they also include PE, and they also include other things in a well-rounded curriculum. So it's not called out individually, but it is a part of a well-rounded curriculum. And like I know, if I can't afford the art teacher, not only are my children missing out on the art, but I'm also going to take this hit on this star rating, because I simply cannot afford an art teacher. And if I can't afford one, I've got to find one that's certified. So now we're talking about a whole nother pathway where you're trying to not only find an artist, music, instrumental, vocal, visual arts, you want to find one that's certified. You've got to put that in your math schedule. So there are too many hurdles as a principal in order to get students the opportunity that they deserve. So that's why we try to fill in the gap.
So if a state said, here is a star rating specifically for the arts, and called out math, music, PE, all that, you think the schools would change how they are appropriating teachers for positions?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't think that they would have a choice but to do that, because there's such an emphasis on accountability. There's such an emphasis on school grades. There's so much of that's tied to funding. Whether you're a high performing school, you're not a high performing school. So I want to take us a step further, because we're talking about accountability, but we also, part of what we know arts do for children is really support their engagement and their desire to go to school. And you alluded to that earlier. So you saw that the students that came to your summer program had higher attendance because they were engaged in something that we just gonna call it fun, because that's what it was. Okay, they were having a time and they were exposed to something that they enjoyed. Now, there's also something that I wanted to share with you and wanted to pick your brain about. A study shows that arts education experiences can reduce the proportion of students receiving disciplinary infractions. So we're not just looking at attendance being higher, which is something we want to see, and we know chronic absenteeism has boomed since the pandemic, but reducing discipline is also something that we'd like to see: higher attendance, lower behavior, and the percentage here says that it reduces it by about 4%. What is the connection, in your opinion, between arts integration and student behavior that we're missing the mark on?
Engagement. It's engaging. And we talked about it earlier. If you tell a 12-year-old to sit for 90 minutes, you're going to have a hard time. But if you engage...
You tell me to sit for 90 minutes, you're going to have a hard time. I mean, okay.
We all struggle.
Right. I don't say any of them.
It's, I think it's beyond engagement. I also think it's differentiation, because now I get to demonstrate mastery of a standard besides bubbling in a circle. Or besides going up to the board. I can demonstrate mastery in another way. So that also creates a level of confidence to where I don't want to put out of class, or I don't need to put out of class because I don't know the answer. So it's differentiation and engagement. And it goes back to the collaborative planning piece, to where the artist and the teacher are actually taking 90 minutes to plan this lesson based on the academic standard and based on the artist's ability to integrate that art standard into that academic standard. So when they collaborate, now you're co-teaching, it's engaging because you are actually engaging students and they're not sitting there listening to you talk for 90 minutes. But it is also differentiated because there's opportunity, as I said, to show mastery in an entirely different way.
Let me push a little bit on access, right? You mentioned, you talked about Baltimore City, Prince George. These are some of the larger districts in the state of Maryland with tremendous large budgets, like $1 billion plus, right? And they still can't get enough access for all their kids, right? And so this is probably why sometimes you see the federal government is saying, we keep giving money, but we don't always see.
But there's still not enough of it.
There's still not enough. It goes. I call it this cycle of all challenges. We saw a study that said, in terms of access, Black and Hispanic students on average earn 30% and 25% fewer art credits, respectively, than their white peers, right? And so, we would probably argue and say, you should be thinking about more opportunity for kids who are either don't have access, right? But what the studies are showing is if you are at a higher level, or if you're a white kid, right, you get more access than your counterparts. Is that trend true in Maryland, would you say? And if so, what's the strategy you guys are doing to help districts make shifts in that?
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And I can tell you that the squeaky wheel will get oiled, because they will go down to the school board and they will protest the losing of the band teacher or the art teacher, whatever the case may be, where when you're in another zip code, the priority is, unfortunately, we're trying to beat the test score. We got to remediate. We got to do A, B, and C. So you forget that this is school, but this is also an opportunity for children to be exposed to something that they never get exposed to.
Yes.
So you have principals in certain zip codes that they're having to choose between A and B, and it's a hard decision to make. That's why at Arts for Learning Maryland, we actively look for grants. We're actively looking for ways to supplement schools and their budgets and what we can do. What can we provide? How can we work with the school system who may have a pot of money for family community engagement? And then we engage the school, and then we'll send an artist and a teacher out to family community engagement nights. So teachers will have the opportunity to work with an artist. So children and parents can get to actually see what this synergy and this co-teaching looks like. So it's incumbent upon us to fill those gaps in certain zip codes, and in my mind, that's an equity issue because you are denying them access, and that's a problem for me.
Well, and I think we talk about like how much budgets are important, and then you also realize that when you're competing in this current climate, living in this current climate of education, where who am I going to hire? I have a low performing school where my students are showing that they cannot read on grade level. Am I going to hire another additional intensive reading teacher, or am I going to hire an arts teacher? And you know your back's against the wall because the state is saying this, this, and this. You have to make the decision to cut one thing that we know shows and gives students opportunities to learn in different ways, to expose their talents, that are not tapped into maybe normally in like a traditional reading or math class. And in that frame of mind, I want to pivot a little bit because now arts education is also getting very technologically savvy. And we know we're moving into this like space of AI. We're also, we have digital animation. We have all types of things that are a part of arts education too. How have you seen that also show up in the work that you're doing? That's one question that I'm curious about. And what's one piece of technology or a digital trend that, is almost kind of like blowing your mind in schools? So yeah, tell us a little about that.
One thing I see, which is a beautiful thing, is children pushing the envelope. So they are pushing artists into different forms and different ways to express themselves. They're looking at opportunities to utilize technology in different ways. So they're pushing the artist beyond where they're comfortable, which in turn makes the artist step their game up, which also in turn creates opportunities for those students to enjoy something that these artists are just getting to themselves. For example, I grew up with 8-track tapes and records. So I have a record collection at my house.
We might have to tell the people what that is.
Right. So some people might not know what that is.
Go to YouTube and look up. But my children were fascinated when they were young. They're like, what is this? I said, that's an album. She said, what is an album? I said, go over there, put it on that Technique 1200, and then I'm going to show you what we call scratching. And they were just like, you are making this up. But it's one of those things they had never seen. So now we have children pushing artists in different ways to where the artists are stepping their game up because they want to be relevant, while also pushing students to find different ways of creating music or creating pictures, anime. There are 1,000,001 different ways that we are not utilizing the imagination of children because the people over 18, they know everything.
Well, and I wonder too if there was a recognition of how much we could infuse technology into the arts. If that would also, when you're talking, kids have to take like computer-based classes, right? I may age myself a little bit, but I remember when I took like a technology course the first time in 6th grade, but it was only typing. We and you were tested on how quickly you could type. But I wonder if there was a pivot in that thinking, and if there was some unlearning there that like arts education only has to be drawing, like you have to draw something or you have to make a portfolio, like a traditional portfolio.
Yeah.
How funding, could change a bit, and allocation of resources or exposure if we saw it that way.
What's dawned on me as you guys are talking about this, what I'm thinking about is, so it's almost like technology now is and I don't want to use the word this word, but this is how it comes across. It's forcing the school systems to adapt and have to adjust, especially when you look at what type of jobs are out there now. You look at how the arts are changing and all that stuff. I guess my wondering all the time is the generational gap in terms of the teacher training, right? And because you have some teachers that are still struggling to just be comfortable with technology, right?
Well, and especially AI now.
And now you're adding AI and all these other components. And so, like, what are the strategies that school systems should be thinking about, and or whoever are governing them? And I think, like, because it you also are starting to see people, I would argue, people not just fleeing education because of the environment or the circumstance, but it's also because they can't keep up, right? I mean, and all of those pressures are mounting up faster with the technology, which I think eventually one day may become the solution to problem solve the human capital issue. And I mean, I hate to tell everybody that, but it's like, I think like that's going to happen sooner than people think.
Yeah, there are quite a few things that are unpacked when you're talking about, excuse me, teacher preparation. I think one of the most powerful things I've seen recently is Dr. Williams up in Morgan State working directly with school leaders in Baltimore City to address that teacher preparedness issue because they are not prepared. I mean, you said something earlier, the answers are not in a textbook. Until you actually and physically get in there and you are trying to teach a kindergartner how to read, which is the most difficult thing on the planet I've ever seen. And I've observed everything from K-12. But kindergartners, and you're trying to teach them how to read, the English language is so complex and so confusing. But the teacher preparation programs are too far removed from the actual schools. So as a result, you have education majors, and that number is dwindling, who come out and they do their student teaching for those 3 months and they quit. Because now you have an understanding, but we have let them waste 3.5 years thinking that this is something they could do. So in my head, you should scale back. And after your sophomore year, now let's have you do a semester of student teaching, because you may think you want to teach high school, but you may be better equipped for middle school.
So you're saying are you saying switch instead of doing like the internship at the end, maybe doing some exposure much earlier on in their programs?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That way you know, like, okay, no, this is not something that I can do. Because I know people. Listen, I know people, friends of mine, who thought they could teach high school, but they ended up teaching elementary school because you had to be built a certain way for high school. You had to be built in a certain way for middle school, and you had to be built in a certain way for elementary school. Everybody cannot teach kindergarten, and everybody cannot teach anatomy and physiology. So let's be clear. So the earlier we get those education majors exposed to public schools, the greater their chances will be of success, simply because they were exposed earlier. And now you have an idea of what to expect. And you also understand that, that was not in chapter 3 when you were in group dynamics. That was not in the book.
Well, and I think that's so true. You really don't know what you don't know until you get, get in the thick of it. We talked about this on one of the shows. Like, I thought I was going to go out and kill it in the game, like I thought I had it. And then you don't realize there's so many other intricacies to teaching outside of, it's not just the curriculum, it's student-teacher relationships, it's teacher-to-teacher relationships, it's teacher-admin relationships, it's the parents who are going to be off the chain about something, doesn't matter how hard you try. So that's such a good point about, do we expose earlier and kind of make some shifts to how teachers are getting prepared to go out into the educational landscape, And
I mean, you raise a great point, because one of the classes that I took when I was getting a master's degree, I was like, this is garbage. That was the most important class I ever took. group dynamics.
Group dynamics.
Once you actually get in a building and you start interacting with all these people and you start thinking about that group dynamic class, like, yeah, I'm glad I paid attention in that one because.
Or I think I didn't spend enough time with exceptional student education. I took a course on that. And there is so many intricacies there. And we could go down that rabbit hole because.
Well, so we, a part of our show, we're getting to our last segment, but a part of our show all the time is we want to talk about what's the possibilities. So we always talk about here's where the challenges, gaps, patterns, statistics, but we always want to talk about what are the possibilities in terms of, what happens moving forward and what are the type of innovations, right? And so when you look at kind of the best and the worst of education systems of what you have seen, what's the possibility for the future of arts education that gives you the most hope, Dr. King?
The people under 12.
Say more.
Every adult wants what's best for their children. I don't care how a child acts in school, how a child performs in school. Every adult wants the best for their children. And the people under 12 are going to drive what's best for them because as adults, we don't know. So my hope is that the people under 12 are given the opportunity to use their voice to actually change their education because we've already been to school. Are we giving them the opportunity to have input into their education because they know what they need to be successful? What we needed to be successful when I came out of school is not what this generation needs to be successful.
Say that louder, please.
But the people under 12, when given the opportunity and the access to arts integration, will show the people over 18 why it's important and why this is something that they need. And that is one of the things we're trying to do with Dream Academy, which is the charter school here in Baltimore City. We are out to prove that arts integration not only improves social emotional behavior, reduces chronic absenteeism, it also increases student academic achievement and allows children to express themselves.
Now, if there are parents that are listening to this show, if there are school leaders that are listening to this show, and they want to advocate for more integration, what recommendations do you have? How can they go about, even if it's looking for grants or things of that nature, what are some resources that exist out there?
Well, there are always opportunity at school boards to have your voice be heard. There's opportunities at the polls to use your vote for those that will act in your best interest. And I don't want to get into Democrat or Republican, but whatever your best interest is, you need to use that vote. You need to use your voice to have a conversation with your school board representative about why in this zip code we don't have A when this zip code has A, B, C, and D. So you have to be willing to engage in hard conversations and hold people accountable because everybody likes accountability until they're held accountable. So you have to be able to have conversations with those who represent you about why your children are being denied. It's an equity issue.
Yeah. Well, let me give you one last question. We figure we always want to end in a positive space. What's the one thing you've learned from a student or a teacher in your career that has profoundly changed your perspective in education?
Did I have to learn it in the moment or could I learn it later?
It could be it doesn't matter. Any time. Well, what's the one thing? What's the one thing you've learned from a teacher or a student in your career?
I think the most important thing I learned was you never remember what somebody will say to you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a child tell me, he's like 28 now and he's married. He said, I can remember being in your office and you told me A, B, C, and D. And I thought about that long and hard, and I just want to let you know, thank you. This is like a year ago, and I'm just like, Reggie Bush now. Yeah, boy, I do remember. I remember that conversation. We had a lot of conversations in my office. But he was in middle school, but he remembered that. So from that point, I mean, I was just like, I'm sure there's some other things that I have said, and hopefully they led to a better outcome for children. But yeah, one thing I would say that I learned is they are listening.
Yeah.
They are actually listening, but they might sit there, roll their eyes, turn their back. But if you say it the right way, they hear what you're saying, and it will stick sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Dr. King,
awesome.
Myself, and Tatiana, we just want to say thank you for coming on our podcast, Unlearned Unlimited. To our audience out there, if you want to talk to Dr. King some more, ask questions, please make sure you put comments or send us information. Where one of the good things we always try to do is we allow our guests to continue to engage with our audience and community. We'll get his handlers and all his information on how you can reach him. They're doing some great work out in the state of Maryland around pushing a lot of arts integration and different things. And so we really appreciate, Dr. King, that you took time out of your busy schedule to come out to us. For everybody else, make sure that you share, like, subscribe to our channel. If you like what we're doing, you want to contribute, please let us know. Put comments. We love to engage with you. And we'll keep getting topics that you want to hear. But today we really wanted to get to the arts education and learn about what was unlearned and what was unlimited in that process. So thank you so much for listening to our show, and have a good night.
Unlimited, 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 unlimited.